All right, welcome everybody. It is 2 o'clock Mountain Time. My name is Ben Garland. I'm the program manager for the Center for Pedestrian and Bicyclist Safety. We are headquartered at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. Our partner universities include San Diego State University, UC Berkeley, the University of Tennessee Knoxville, and the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Our center director is Dr. Nick Ferenchak. You can find us on the web at pedbikesafety.org. Today's webinar is Demystifying Federal Grants for Street Safety Improvements. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available to watch in a few days by visiting the webinars link on our website. Today you're going to hear from the Federal Highway Administration about some of the grant programs available and useful resources to help you apply. Then you'll hear from David Smith in Charlotte, North Carolina about their Safe Streets for All grant project. And last but not least, from Richard Meadows in Bernalillo County, New Mexico, about their experience with different federal grants for street safety. During the webinar, you can click the Q&A button at any time and type in questions for our panelists. We will try to answer questions as we go along, but we'll also have 15 minutes at the end to answer any remaining questions. With that, I will let FHWA take it away and get this webinar started. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so can you see the slides?
Yeah, I can see your application. Yes. So
in presentation mode or
yeah, perfect. There you go.
Let's go. All right. So hello everyone. I'm Luis Melgoza. I'm the safety engineer for the New Mexico office for Federal Highway. Along with me, I have Anthony. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony Dominguez. I'm the discretionary grant manager for the New Mexico Division office.
Okay. So just to get started, myself and Anthony will be presenting the FHWA grant programs for bike and pedestrian infrastructure on behalf of our office, of our headquarters office of the discretionary grants program. So before starting, we gotta read this disclaimer. These presentations are presented by FHWA and other entities. The views and opinions expressed in these presentations are the presenters and do not necessarily reflect those of Federal Highway or the USDOT. The content do not necessarily reflect official policy of the USDOT. In addition, the USDOT does not endorse products or manufacturers or outside entities, trademarks and names. They're used because they're essential to the presentation and getting the information across. All right, so before we get started, I'll provide a quick overview of our presentation. We're gonna get started with some discretionary grants basics, provide an overview of the grants programs for bike and pedestrian infrastructure, go over some application considerations, and provide some resources for you. So the discretionary grants basics. The bipartisan infrastructure law, better known as bill, more than doubled the number of available USDOT grant opportunities to over 40 back in 2021. Bill provides opportunities for competitive grants in education, research, planning, and capital construction. Eligible entities range from state DOTs, metropolitan transportation organizations, local entities, tribes, transit agencies, universities, and others. So most of the USDOT discretionary grants are competitively offered. Programs are announced through the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFOs. Selection criteria and other critical information are found in each of the program's NOFOs. Individual programs offer webinars and technical assistance to help agencies increase their awareness and competitiveness in those programs. So now I'll be going over our grant application roadmap. I'll be going over the pre-award, award, and post-award. So for the pre-award, applicants need to register on sam.gov and grants.gov in advance of application. You have to note that registering is not immediate. It takes some time. Applicants then are able to search for USDOT grants on grants.gov. That's our website where all of our USDOT grants are posted, along with the NOFO, which outlines the eligibility criteria and requirements. Once you find the grant, the applicant is able to apply for the funding of the project that meets the program requirements before the end of the close of the application window. USDOT then reviews submitted applications and selects programs to award funding based on the stated criteria of the NOFO. So make sure you read the NOFO and see what are the eligible criteria. So then moving into the award, the USDOT notifies all applicants of the final award decision, including applications not selected for award. For those not selected for award, they may receive a letter of encouragement to apply in future application opportunities or seek alternative grant opportunities. Once an award is made out, the USDOT and the applicant work together to negotiate and sign a grant agreement. Once the grant agreement is signed, USDOT disburses funds. From there, the grantee implements the awarded project and adheres to the necessary conditions of the award. And in the post-award, this is where the selected grantees doing the work. So in the post-award, the USDOT monitors the project's progress and provides technical assistance if needed to the grantees. And periodically, the grantee reports progress to USDOT, either through the project progress reports or federal financial reports that are required. And in addition, in the post-award, the grantee completes, once the work is done and the project is ready to be closed out, the grantee completes all closeout requirements and submits final financial and technical reports. So now getting to understand the NOFO. So the notice of funding opportunity, they're structured is standardized. Contact the program point of contact about any specific requirements. The sections in the NOFO are as follows. Section A provides the program description. Section B is the federal award information, which includes total funding amount, anticipated number and size of awards, and a period of performance. Section C has eligibility information. It includes eligible applicants, eligible activities, and the cost sharing requirements for the grant. Section D has the application and submission information. Section E has application review information, which includes the evaluation criteria, the selection process, and a anticipated award announcement date. So the evaluation criteria, that's what the USDOT will use to evaluate your application. So just make sure you kind of check all the boxes in that area. Section F is the federal award administration information. Section G has contact info. So if you have questions about the NOFO, you could contact the program manager. It should have an email. It might be a generic email, but just contact them through there. And then Section H is just reserved for other information. So now I'll pass it over to Anthony to provide to go over some grant programs for the bike and pedestrian infrastructure improvements.
Sounds good. Thank you, Luis. In the next few slides, I'll be giving a high-level overview of 5 different discretionary grant programs for bike and pedestrian infrastructure. Next slide, please. So on the left-hand side here, you'll see the 5 different discretionary grant programs I'll be touching base on the upcoming slides. I wanted to point out on this slide our bike and pedestrian program page that's found on our fhwa.dot.gov external website. If you were to just Google FHWA bike and pedestrian program, this page should come right up. Under the key resources there on the right corner, if you see pedestrian and bicycle funding opportunities, there's a table in that PDF that indicates project funding programs for pedestrian and bicycle activities throughout all of USDOT. So just wanted to highlight that, and there's a lot of information on the different funding programs USDOT has. Next slide, please. So the first discretionary grant program I'll touch on is the Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program. In FY 2023, there was $44.5 million set aside for this program. And this grant looks to construct projects to provide safe and connected active transportation facilities. On the right here, you can see eligible activities, which include planning, design, and construction for things or components such as trails, pedestrian facilities, bikeways, and other routes that connect 2 or more communities, metropolitan regions, or states. Next slide, please. The next program I'll touch on is the RAISE program, Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. This is one of our biggest discretionary grant programs we have. As you can see, funding set aside from 2022 to 2026 is $12.5 billion. The RAISE program looks to help urban and rural communities move projects forward that modernize road, bridge, transit, rail ports, intermodal transportation, and other transportation systems. As you can see, eligible activities, pretty much anything under highway or bridge that's eligible under US Title 23 is eligible for this grant program. Next slide, please. The next discretionary grant program is Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods program. There was $1 billion or is $1 billion set aside for this discretionary grant program. And this looks to restore community connectivity by removing, retrofitting, or mitigating highway or other transportation facilities that have created barriers to communities. As you can see in the eligibility activities, this one is a little different as it has set-asides for planning grants and capital construction grants. So you're able to apply for either a planning or capital construction. Next slide, please. This next discretionary grant program is the Safe Streets and Roads for All. This is one of our high-profile discretionary grant programs. This is tailored to our local, regional, and tribal communities for implementing planning projects, demonstration activities, and/or implementation type projects that prevent deaths or serious injuries on our nation's highways. The set aside for this is $5 billion from 2022 to 2026. And again, under eligible activities, you can see that there's 3 different types of grants that you can apply for under Safe Streets for All, which include action plan grants, planning with demonstration grants, and then implementation grants, which are like our capital / construction type projects. Next slide, please. The last discretionary grant program I'll touch on here is our Tribal Transportation Safety Funds. There was $75 million set aside for 2022 to 2026, and some of the eligible activities include systematic roadway departure countermeasures, developing transportation safety plans, assessing safety data, and then building infrastructure or having infrastructure improvements that are eligible under 23 USC. Next slide, please. So in the next few slides, I'll touch on some of the considerations when submitting a discretionary grant application. Next slide. First and foremost, please consider the first consideration. Please make sure your projects meet the eligibility requirements. So in the previous slides, Luis touched on the NOFO. Please ensure that your project meets those NOFO requirements for the respected discretionary grant program that you're applying for. Most discretionary grant programs have funds that have specific obligation and or expenditure period deadlines. So please make sure your project is in line with those deadlines, that you'll be able to obligate your project before those deadlines. Those deadlines for obligation are set by Congress, and USDOT cannot extend those. Also, most discretionary grant programs have a local match. So again, please read that NOFO and make sure your application has the correct local match. One important thing that comes up a lot, we are a reimbursement agency, right? So please ensure that you're aware that grant funds are not awarded up front, and we are again a reimbursement for eligible activities. And then, like Luis had stated, the NOFOs are standardized. So funding reimbursement processes are found in Section B of all the NOFOs and the respected discretionary grant programs. And then the last bullet there, discretionary grant projects require financial and performance progress reporting. I'll touch more on that in the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. So competitive applications should tell a complete story. Please, in your application, demonstrate how your project aligns with the goals, merit criteria, and selections of the discretionary grant program that you are submitting for. Those are all found in your NOFO. Clearly articulate compliance with regulations, whether that's state, local, or federal regulations. Please remember to state your environmental review status and or permits that will need to be obtained. Communicate the impact. So include quantifying statements, provide any data that you have on your project, and demonstrate the commitment and accountability. So in your application, clearly outline the processes and procedures on how you plan to track and monitor your project activities. Next slide, please. So we have listed here some grant application resources. The first at grants.gov, I'm sure the majority of the audience, if not all the audience, is well aware of the grants.gov website, as it's where all federal grant opportunities are located. You can also set up email notifications if you have a certain criteria that you're looking for. Grants.gov also has a standard form repository. So if you're applying for discretionary grant and you need a specific SF form, standard form, those are housed in grants.gov. And there's also a grants learning center with many articles and resources In the last slide, we have a link to that Grants Learning Center. The next application resource is the USDOT Navigator. This is found on our transportation.gov website. This tool is searchable for USDOT grant opportunities. It also has links to past webinars, application toolkits, checklists, and there's technical assistance resources on that Navigator website. So if you haven't taken a look at that, that's a really handy tool to look at. The last link we have here is for a technical assistance program. All states have a LTAP center. Please get in contact with your LTAP center and see how they can help with discretionary grants. Specifically here in New Mexico, the LTAP Center does provide a training and or class on grant writing. So if you're not here in New Mexico, please check with your LTAP centers and see what resources they might have in place. Next slide, please. So grant reporting requirements. All discretionary grants have mandatory reporting requirements that come from 200 CFR. So these were set in place by Congress for all discretionary grants. These reporting requirements are listed and found first and foremost in the NOFO and in the terms and conditions in the respective discretionary grant program. They're also usually listed in the grant agreement that you'll be filling out if you're awarded a discretionary grant. Next slide, please. And then our last slide here is just some additional resources. It touched on the USDOT Navigator. Again, if you haven't taken a look at that, it's really a helpful tool. The next slide here is the USDOT contacts. If you want to look at some of those contacts or have questions. The third link there is for, the second link there is for the grants.gov Learning Center that I had mentioned earlier. The third link there is for the USDOT contacts. And the final link is for our FHWA Federal Aid Essentials videos. So if you haven't taken a look at those videos on our FHWA website, those are very handy. They give basically a cradle to grave 2 to 8 minute videos on the whole federal aid process and how to manage projects within federal aid. So with that, that's all we have for you today. And Ben, I don't know if we're taking questions now or if you want to move on to the next presenters.
We do just have one quick question, so let's just get to that real quick. Can you guys see it on your end? Or I can just read it off. It's
Sure, if you wouldn't mind reading it.
We have a question that says, is there a resource that pushes out notifications of awarded projects when they're released, specifically for non-applicants? So it seems like they just kind of want to keep track of what's going on with these award programs, even though they're not applying themselves. Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, I think if you apply the govs or the grants.gov website would notify you if you're when that is released. But we do have national publications that come out on our external USDOT website. Emails are only sent out to awarded applicants.
All right.
I think I'll add to that, I guess, like in terms of the Safe Streets for All grants, there is an external website that has tons of information on the Safe Streets for All grants, and it has who has been selected every year from FY22 till now. It has a map, I believe, that shows the entities that have been selected and all that, but I'm not sure about the other grants, but each grant has a website.
Right, and that's true for all the discretionary grant programs. They're published on the external websites. but there are not email notifications that go out if you do not apply. If you do apply and you're unsuccessful, there will be an email notification that tells you that. Same for if you are successful, there will be an email notification that goes out to you.
All right, sounds good. We will continue with David in Charlotte. Go ahead, David.
All right, can you hear me okay, Ben?
Loud and clear.
All right, so let me screen share and we will get rolling here. Okay, how's that look for you?
That's perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking some time out of your day to hear about our Safe Streets and Roads for All experience in Charlotte. I'll be sharing information about our approach to the SS4A application process in the hopes that our experience will be useful as some of you consider or plan a grant application. Just having seen the last presentation, I think a lot of this information is going to dovetail nicely and hopefully really be useful for you. My name is David Smith, and I manage the Engineering Operations Division for the Charlotte Department of Transportation, which includes our traffic safety section and Vision Zero program. For those of you who may not be familiar with Charlotte, we're the largest city in North Carolina, located in the central part of the state just north of the border with South Carolina. In addition to being the largest city in both Carolinas, we're the 15th largest city in the country and continue to experience rapid growth. Here's some data about our mobility assets, which I won't go through bullet by bullet since you'll get this slide deck later. I would like to highlight the miles of sidewalk and bike facilities we have. And although most of these bike lanes are not buffered or protected, we are leaning into higher quality bike facilities as we build new projects. As our city grows in population and density, there's a desire from the community for additional traffic safety infrastructure. And that's where SS4A comes in. So let's begin demystifying. I guess a quick story about our SS4A journey. We received our notice of award in early calendar 2023. We received a $4.47 million SS4A grant, and since then, we have executed the agreement with FHWA, which they talked about the importance of doing that. Our design consultant has completed preliminary engineering work, and just last month, we wrapped up public engagement for our bundle of 20+ projects. So I'd like to talk through how we prepared to apply for the implementation grant, hopefully sharing strategies that you will find helpful in your community. Let's start with a quick history lesson on Vision Zero in Charlotte. We've had a program that dates back 7+ years when we first published our high injury network, assembled a Vision Zero task force, and developed our first action plan. Our city council adopted the strategic mobility plan in 2022, which reaffirmed our Vision Zero aspiration of becoming a community with zero traffic fatalities. Voters have approved transportation bonds, which include funding for Vision Zero every time they have appeared on the ballot, and for that we are thankful. One thing I'd like to note is the $17 million in funding in 2023 was the largest Vision Zero bond to date, and really enabled us to make progress on adding street lighting to unlit thoroughfares throughout the city. So let's talk about our application strategy. Since we already had an action plan in place, we chose to pursue an implementation grant, pulling from existing project lists to build a bundle of individual safety projects for consideration. We chose to focus on FHWA proven safety countermeasure projects, and in doing so, felt we had really good projects to bring forward for consideration in a discretionary grant, and also could leverage our local dollars with grant money to deliver even more of this type of infrastructure to the public. And by using grant dollars, working on some of these existing project lists, we were able to accelerate not only these projects, but other projects that will be eventually funded from the same source. As you'll see on this list, the project types we picked were enhanced pedestrian crossings using PED hybrid beacons and rectangular rapid flashing beacons, new signals and signal upgrades, which includes installing accessible pedestrian signals and implementing leading pedestrian intervals and filling sidewalk gaps. These projects came from prioritized individual project lists and some of the elements from our Safe Routes to School plan. So for advice for other communities, I'd like to split up topics into pre-NOFO and post-NOFO activities. And this dovetails with our previous presenter about the different phases of the life of a project. Since there currently is an active SS4A NOFO, some of these may or may not be useful in the short term, but hopefully will be for other grant opportunities in the future. So based on our history and success in pursuing federal grants, we already had on-call engineering consultants able to assist with application preparation. And if you don't already have these resources, it'd be worth thinking about having this option. As you likely know, if you work in the public sector, public procurement processes can be time consuming. And if you wait until the NOFO is out, it may be too late to get help from consultants. Like I said, in our case, we've received generous support from bond voters, which put us in a great position to have the 20% local match readily available, which in the case of our grant award was a little over $1 million. If you don't have a Vision Zero action plan, you may not be eligible for an implementation grant. But if you have an action plan like Charlotte does and want to pursue an implementation grant, identify potential projects that can realistically be delivered within a grant timeframe. As with other federal grants, project readiness will be something that application will be graded on. And in Charlotte, we bundled small projects that were expected to have minimal right-of-way and environmental impacts to increase the likelihood that we would be able to deliver on those commitments. Prior to the NOFO release is a good time to determine when the governing board will need to be involved. Do you need to go to the board to ask permission to apply? Is it only after being awarded? Neither or both? Although the NOFOs change from year to year, key themes are likely to show up in future NOFOs, and reviewing these previous documents can be helpful in getting your thoughts together on how to tell your community story. For example, how would equity be addressed in your application? And on this and other topics, is there local work that has already been done that can be incorporated into the application? As I have here on the slide, have your bench ready. Identifying resources prior to the NOFO release will make the application process smoother and less stressful. This bench should include your subject matter experts, and be sure to include your finance folks, as financial information will be a key part of the application and reporting if the grant is awarded. So once the NOFO is out, the clock is ticking and the deadline approaching. As I mentioned previously, the key themes are likely to show up from previous NOFOs, but make sure you read the current version carefully to get a full picture of the requirements. Having assembled your bench and thought through your strategy prior to the NOFO will really pay dividends here, as you'll have a head start on what needs to be done in preparation for submittal. There will likely be several internal and/or external folks working on application prep, so think through how to properly coordinate that work. Really advise to get started as soon as possible, as once the NOFO is released, time will pass quickly and there's plenty of work to do. As Anthony mentioned in the previous presentation, take advantage of FHWA webinars and forums for potential applicants to ask questions. This also was briefly mentioned in the previous presentation. The application will eventually be submitted through grants.gov and take time early in the process to ensure all the information needed is available for account setup. In the case of Charlotte, our department director is the applicant, and she is the one to officially click submit when the time comes. For this and other grants, staff within the department with accounts can upload documents and fill in information in preparation for submitting. And when it comes time to click the button, we like to reserve time a day or two in advance of the deadline to leave room to troubleshoot and or work out any technology kinks should they arise. After submitting our application, we worked with our communications team to develop this one-pager to quickly and easily describe the application to the public and elected officials. And one thing you heard from FHWA is tell your story and make that a compelling story. It's hard to see at this scale, but you'll be able to see it in the slides. The map on the back of the one pager shows our project locations overlaid on USDOT Transportation Disadvantage Census tracts. And this is all work you can think about pre-NOFO, and it's a great example of how that advanced work can align your local priorities to what the grant scoring is going to be looking for. So we talked a little about strategy and the pre and post NOFO activities. So let me talk briefly about the project types we picked. As I mentioned, we used existing project lists to develop our slate of 20+ projects broken down into these categories. So APS LPI upgrades at signals at 7 locations, new RRFBs at 6 locations, PED hybrid beacons at 5 locations, 3 full new traffic signals, and filling sidewalk gaps at 2 locations. All of these projects include installing and or improving accessible curb ramps. And I've included on the slide for y'all to watch later a YouTube video that we use for our virtual public meeting that was held from June 17th through 30th. And in concert with this video, we use an online project feedback form to gather input from the public. So 20+ projects, don't have time to go through all the different examples, but wanted to show at least an example of one in Charlotte. So this RFB project I'm going to show you was not funded through SS4A. It is already complete, but it's a good example of the type of project we will be hoping to achieve in Charlotte at those locations. So this pre-construction photo shows a less than inviting pedestrian crossing experience. And although the speed limit on these one-way pair streets is 30 miles per hour, running speeds are frequently higher. Just to give you some neighborhood context, there's a large county park to the left and residential land uses to the right, making this a great spot for an enhanced crossing. So here we are post-construction, so you can see the pair of RRFBs flanking the newly marked crosswalk. Accessible ramps were rebuilt to ensure compliance with ADA, and you may notice on the left we included a curb extension in the project scope to shorten the crossing distance and better define the on-street parking on the left of the street. This was a one-way pair, and the other half of this pair is one block to the left and got a similar RRFB treatment to link up these residential uses to the park. So some final thoughts from Charlotte on our experience. SS4A can either help get Vision Zero efforts started or advance implementation efforts of local projects or programs already underway. It's a great way to extend the reach of your local funding and implement aspirational projects that aren't fully funded. And as we heard, these are part of the infrastructure law, which will eventually sunset, and these opportunities may not last forever. So what are you waiting for? I hope you found some of this info helpful, and happy to take questions either now or at the end of the session. I've included my contact information here. So you can get in touch with me beyond the webinar session, and just like to acknowledge all the members of the SS4A team here in Charlotte for their hard work to date. And at this point, I will hand it back over to Ben.
All right, thanks, David. That was great. Appreciate it. We don't have any questions in the Q&A right now, so I will just hand it over to Richard and take it away, Richard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ben. I'm gonna try to share right now and let me know that you can see my presentation. How does that look?
It looks, I can see your PowerPoint application, so I think if you put it in presentation mode, you should be good. And you'll need to go up to the top and to your display settings and change the screen.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, great. So first of all, there's a lot of considerations and criteria in putting together these applications. Safety is just one of the criteria that you'll want to talk about, but that's what we're focusing on today. And I should mention that a lot of the criteria kind of work together and build on each other, especially equity and safety and sustainability and safety. So you'll want to pay attention to that. So I did, even though this is mostly about discretionary grants, I did want to touch on formula grants because this is where at the county we've been most successful over the years in receiving grants for bike and ped infrastructure. So for instance, transportation alternative programs, CMAQ, and highway safety infrastructure programs. And all of those, while they go through the state DOT, there is a safety component to them, and it can help build out that infrastructure for you. If you are going the way of the competitive grants, we've RAISE grant is one of the ones we've applied for over the years. We've been successful at planning grants, but not implementation grants on these. But like some of the other grants, you'll want to emphasize your high fatality and injury network, how you are going to be addressing safety for vulnerable road users. You want a evidence-based or data-driven approach in your grant to talk about contributing factors. And we like to talk about proven countermeasures in terms of the types of programs you'll be designing and building with your project. And like SS4A, you also want to talk about how this aligns with the National Roadway Safety Strategy. On the RAISE grants, you have to do a benefit cost analysis, and that might be difficult for some. You often have to hire a consultant to put these together, but it can show the safety benefits of your project. For Safe Streets for All, in the one we received, we were able to work off of the city's action plan, because we still don't have an action plan in place. But our project is shared with the city. In fact, it's multiple jurisdictions. It's a state highway. It's in the city and the county and maintained by the city and the county. So we're working with all three jurisdictions on the project. But I did put together the different components that you'll need to put into your safety action plan and address. So in terms of implementation, grants, as I mentioned, there's multiple efforts going on in our region. The city has had an action plan in place for about 3 years, our school district as well. Our Regional Council of Governments is about to adopt one, and then at the county level, we've got an action plan that's underway, and hopefully in the next year we'll have that adopted.
The part with the post office.
See, for our project that we were awarded, it's rather than Charlotte did a bundle of projects that are being implemented at multiple locations throughout their community. We chose to focus on a single corridor, and it's one of the
You have that letter.
corridors on our high fatality injury network that has some of the greatest challenges. And you can see kind of on the bottom right, all of the crashes going on there, including several pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries. But we're doing a complete streets approach, which will implement a lot of different countermeasures. So here's our high fatality and injury network, and you can see on the map the location of South Coors that we're focusing on. These are the different countermeasures that we're implementing on this corridor with the project. We were able to get a road safety audit funded through one of those HSIP grants that the state awards, and the audit identified the different countermeasures that we should implement, and that's what we're following in the design of our project. And then another grant that we recently applied for is the Active Transportation Infrastructure Implementation Program grant. And this one is interesting because it's for a trail project, and we're looking at safety in street crossings, and that's mostly where we'll be putting our safety infrastructure. And I apologize for any noise that you're hearing over the microphone.
So
And with that, I will close and answer any questions you might have.
when they changed the Stadium Road to Avenida Cesar Chavez, that was a big deal. They
All right, we
changed
don't have any
Sugar
questions in the
Boulevard
queue.
to Avenida Dolores Huerta.
We'll give it another minute or
That
so
was
if
a big
anybody out there
deal.
has any questions for
And now
Richard
you were experiencing
about
on
his
Little
experience.
Italy Place because
You can go ahead and
you
type those into the
suggested.
Q&A box.
And
All right, I'm not seeing any questions coming in, so we will end it there. Turn my video on. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I will drop a link in the chat again if anybody didn't see that, and I'll leave the webinar going for another couple of minutes to give people an opportunity to click that link. We will make this available on our website, a recording of this webinar plus copies of all the slide decks, so you guys can click through to the resources that our panelists provided. But other than that, we will end the recording now, and And I'll end the webinar in 1 minute just to give everybody a chance to click that link. Thanks for attending, everybody. Appreciate it.